This happened last summer. I was tired of my boring office job and wanted to have some fun. So I gathered a few friends and we decided to head to an old cabin in the woods. It looked charming on the outside, but once inside, it felt different. Dust covered everything and an odd chill hung in the air. I couldn't shake the feeling. We settled in okay. Laughter filled the room at first, and I was excited to start filming. I grabbed my camera and began documenting our trip. As night fell, I knew I needed to record an introduction for my vlog. While searching through the drawers for a good location, I stumbled on an old audio recorder. It looked broken, but something pushed me to press play. I thought it might be some funny memories. Instead, I heard faint voices and laughter. It chilled me, but I brushed it off as an old prank. As the night went on, things turned strange. We sat around the fire when a cold draft swept my face. I looked around but saw nothing. My friends started whispering. I didn't hear them, but I could see their faces grow uneasy. They joked about it, but their laughs were nervous. I wanted to believe it was nothing, just the isolation getting to us. The next day, we noticed more oddities. Shadows flickered outside, and I often felt a presence nearby when I looked out the window. I didn't mention it to the others. I was scared they would think I was crazy. Then at night, while my friends slept, I listened to the audio recordings. They got under my skin. Conversations I hadn't had yet appeared, along with events that would happen soon after. It was creepy. One night, I found a recording that cut off mid-sentence. The eerie silence that followed was suffocating. I felt like something was waiting, watching. I turned to my friends to tell them, but they were asleep. I hesitated. What if? They thought I was losing it. I didn't want to seem paranoid. That evening, the cabin felt different. The air felt thick, like I should be careful with every little movement. I stared at that recorder, my heart racing. Suddenly, I sensed whatever was in the cabin was aware of us, waiting for the right moment. Then came a deep silence. Not the kind of silence where you hear nothing, but one where you felt something was lurking. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. I hated how I could still hear soft whispers. It got so bad that I couldn't sleep. I sat awake, looking out the window, desperately seeking a sign that we were not alone. Days passed and the unease grew stronger. I kept the recorder close. My friends seemed distant, their laughter no longer full of joy. They were restless too. One night, I watched them sleep and I realized something was very wrong. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever we had disturbed was still there, waiting for us. I had come to the cabin for fun, but now I was trapped in a nightmare. The next morning, I woke up with a headache. It felt like my mind was clouded. I glanced around the room. My friends were still asleep. I decided to go outside and get some fresh air. The sun was shining, but the light didn't seem warm. I wandered toward the woods, fighting the urge to call my friends, but I didn't want to disturb them. As I walked, I noticed something odd near the tree line. There was a slight indentation in the ground, as if something heavy had been dragged. Curiosity got the better of me, and I approached. The unease that had settled in my gut twisted tighter. I took my camera and pointed it toward the spot, wondering if I should capture the moment. While filming, I spotted something shiny half buried in the dirt. I knelt down and dug my fingers into the earth. My heart raced as I pulled out a rusty key. It was old and heavy, the kind that could unlock something significant. I looked around, feeling eyes on me. My skin prickled with fear. What had I disturbed? I turned and hurried back to the cabin, key clutched in my hand. Once inside, I considered my friends. They were still asleep, but they wouldn't stay that way for long. I had to figure out what this key was for. There had to be something in this cabin that it connected to. I searched the main room first. There were bookshelves filled with dust-covered tomes and old furniture that creaked as I moved around. Nothing seemed out of place, except for that uneasy silence that still loomed over us. I moved to the back where I noticed a locked door. My heart raced as I tried the key. It fit perfectly. I turned it slowly, and the door creaked open. Inside was a small room, likely a storage space. The air was thick with an eerie smell, like mold and something else, something worse. I shone my camera's light around, revealing old boxes and a small table covered with more audio equipment. My pulse quickened when I saw another recorder. It looked like the one I had found, but in better condition. Without thinking, I pressed play. A voice crackled through the speaker. It was clear, but distorted. "You should have stayed away." I froze. An icy chill spread through me. I glanced back at the door and then at the windows. I felt trapped, like the walls were closing in. The whispers grew louder in my ears. It dawned on me that this place wasn't just haunted. It was alive, feeding on our fears. Suddenly, my friend Sarah stirred in the other room, mumbling something incoherent. It snapped me out of my daze, and I rushed back to rejoin them. I needed to warn. But what could I say? They needed to believe me when I told them we weren't alone. That's when I heard it. A soft thud from behind me, coming from the locked room. My heart dropped. I turned back to see the door slowly inching close on its own. The feeling of dread washed over me again, and I realized whatever was here, it was responding to me. Before I could move, my voice broke the silence. "Guys, wake up! We need to leave right now!" But what if it was already too late? What had I awakened? As my friends began to stir, I felt the weight of my discovery pressing down harder. Sarah rubbed her eyes and looked at me, concern creasing her forehead. "What's wrong?" she asked, still half asleep. "Something's off. We need to leave, now." My words came out rushed, and I could see the confusion on her face. I turned to the others, hoping they felt the same urgency. I needed them to understand. "Just give me a few minutes, okay?" Andrew mumbled from the floor. He sat up, hair tousled and bleary-eyed. "What's going on?" "You guys don't get it. There's something in that locked room. I heard a voice, and I don't think we should stick around." Lily finally joined the conversation, her expression shifting from sleepiness to alarm. "What voice? What are you talking about?" But before I could respond, I heard it again. The soft thud, louder now, as if whatever was in the locked room intended to make itself known. My heart raced, and I shot a glance back at the door, dreading what else might escape. Okay, let's check it out together," Sarah said, her voice steadying me. Andrew and Lily exchanged wary glances, but nodded. I didn't want to go back alone, but the thought of facing whatever was behind that door terrified me. We moved as a group toward the locked room. As I reached for the doorknob, a surge of anxiety washed over me, but I had to push through. I turned the knob and pulled the door open again. The musty smell hit us immediately, and I heard the faint crackling from the other recorder. "What the hell is all this?" Andrew asked, eyes darting around the cramped space. My stomach twisted as I took a step inside. The air felt charged, heavy with an unspoken warning. "I found a second recorder," I admitted, my voice shaky. "I played it and—" I hesitated, the memory of the warning gripping me. It said we should have stayed away. Lily's face paled, and she took a step back. "That's creepy. I don't like this." I moved further into the room and noticed something else sticking out from under a dusty tarp. My curiosity won again, and I pulled it back. It was a stack of old photos, yellowed with age. I flipped through them quickly, but a chill ran down my spine as I recognized the faces. People who had come here in the past, looking happy in the pictures, but there was something unsettling about them. Then my fingers stopped at one photograph that made my heart pound. It showed a group of 4 friends, the same number as us, staring forward with eerily vacant expressions. I looked back at my friends, disbelief flooding my senses. Guys, these people look just like us. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from outside, jolting us as the cabin rattled. We turned to the front door, which had swung open violently, and I could see dark shadows moving just beyond the tree line. "Get back!" I shouted, shoving the photos into my backpack. "We need to lock this door." But before we could react, the shadows started to shift, revealing outlines closing in on our cabin. Panic surged through me. I fumbled for the door, while my friends scrambled to grab anything they could. "Someone's out there!" Sarah cried, as the shadows grew closer, their movements fast and chaotic. I slammed the door shut and braced my weight against it. "We need to figure this out, fast!" Just when I thought we'd secured a moment of safety, a piercing scream blasted through the air, sending shivers down my spine. "Did you hear that?" Andrew whispered, his eyes wide with fear. I nodded slowly, heart racing again. It's not just us anymore. Then, in that terrifying moment, I realized something worse. We had awakened something it would never let us forget. The cabin creaked ominously as we huddled closer, hearts pounding in unison. The shriek faded, but the echoes of terror lingered around us like a ghost. I turned to my friends, their faces pale, eyes wide with dread. "What do we do now?" Lily asked, fear cracking her voice. "We stay quiet," I said, knowing full well it wouldn't guarantee our safety. I pointed toward the window. "Let's watch and see what's out there. Maybe it's just wildlife." We gathered near the window, peering through the grime that had built up over the years. I squinted into the darkness, searching for any movement. Shadows danced at the edge of the tree line, shifting in and out of sight. "See anything?" Andrew whispered, his breath warm against my ear. "No, just those shadows," I replied, still scanning the area. My mind raced with thoughts of what those shadows could be. "We need to figure out what's going on. We can't just stay here." Then a rustling sound broke the silence, followed by a low, guttural growl that sent chills down my spine. My heart sank. "That's not wildlife," I whispered, glancing back at my friends. Panic flared in Sarah's eyes. "What if it's whatever was in that locked room? What if it followed us?" The urgency of her words hit me like a punch. "Whatever it is, we need to be smart. Let's find something to defend ourselves." I scanned the cabin, desperate for anything useful. There was an old metal fire poker. Leaning against the fireplace, I grabbed it and handed it to Andrew. "Take this." As he held the poker, I raked my eyes over the space, searching for more makeshift weapons. "There has to be something else," I said, inwardly cursing our luck. "Look!" Lily pointed to the side wall. Hanging on a hook was a battered old axe, its blade rusted but still sharp enough to do some damage. I pulled it down, feeling the weight of it in my hands. "Good thinking," I said, adrenaline rushing through me. "Now we need a plan." Before we could strategize, another scream pierced the air, closer this time, a haunting call of someone in pain. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. "What if they need help?" Lily said, her voice shaking. "Or what if it's a trap?" I argued, knowing deep down that venturing out could be the worst decision we could make. "We can't let whatever's out there catch us off guard. We need to figure out what we're up against." Just then, the shadows around the cabin shifted violently, and a figure emerged from the tree line. My breath hitched as I recognized the outline. Human, but distorted. My grip tightened on the axe. "Guys, look!" I pointed frantically. The figure moved closer, its face obscured in darkness. But it wore a tattered jacket, similar to the one in the old photos. "Who are you?" I shouted, trying to sound braver than I felt. The figure paused, cocking its head as if considering its next move. Then, in a voice that was too familiar, yet chilling, it spoke. "You shouldn't have come here." It was then that I realized we were facing something much worse than the shadows. We had misunderstood everything. What we had awakened was not just a presence, but a warning of events long forgotten. Feeling the air grow heavier, I turned to my friends, panic rising again. "We need to leave, now!" But before we could react, the door rattled violently, as if something outside was trying to get in. That's when I saw it, a second figure slipping through the shadows, their eyes glinting like cold metal in the dark. Our time to escape was running out. A loud bang jarred the cabin, rattling the wooden walls. We jumped, glancing at each other with wide eyes. The first figure stepped forward, its features becoming clearer. It had a gaunt expression, with eyes that seemed to swallow the light. I raised the axe, my heart racing, as the door trembled against whatever force was outside. "Don't let it in!" I shouted, my voice of anger and fear. The second figure was almost at the window now, moving with an unsettling grace. "What do we do?" Andrew asked, gripping the fire poker tightly. I scanned the room, desperate for options. The front door would not hold for long, and the windows were old and cracked. My mind raced with ideas. "We need to barricade the door!" I yelled, pointing to the dining table. Lily and Sarah rushed to help me push it against the entrance. The wood scraping against the floor echoed in the tension-filled room. As we shoved the table in place, the door jolted again, the hinges creaking under the strain. "Do you think they can get in?" Sarah whispered, her voice barely above a breath. I shook my head, unsure. "I hope not." Just then, a sharp tapping interrupted us, coming from the back of the cabin. My stomach twisted into knots. "Is there another way inside?" Andrew asked, panic evident in his tone. "I don't know," I replied, my heart thudding in my chest. "Let's just focus on keeping this door shut." The figure outside continued to pound against the door, and I could feel the cabin trembling under the force. We backed away from the entrance, the sound echoing in our ears. "We need to find out what they want," I said, my voice wavering. "They're not attacking, not yet." "We can't let them in to find out," Lily said, trembling. "Maybe it's someone who needs help?" Sarah suggested, but I felt the chill in my bones at the thought. "Or something worse," I countered. The growl from earlier echoed in my mind. Then, in the midst of the chaos, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. A glint of silver was protruding from the boards of the floor in the corner. My heart raced as I steeled myself to approach it. "I'll check that out," I said, moving cautiously. As I knelt down, scraping back the wood, the glint grew brighter. I pulled up a rusted latch, revealing a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards. My breath hitched. "Guys, come here! There's something down here!" They gathered around me, peering into the darkness. A small box rested inside, old and covered in dust. I hesitated, uncertainty gnawing at me. "What if it's booby-trapped?" Andrew whispered. "Only one way to find out," I muttered, reaching for the box. Just as my fingers brushed against it, a deafening crash sounded, the door splintering under the relentless force of the figure outside. "We don't have much time," I shouted, pulling the box free. But before I could open it, the door flew open, revealing the twisted face of the first figure. It stepped inside, the darkness surrounding it like a shroud. I turned the box over in my hands, and that's when I heard her voice again, echoing back from the depths of the cabin. "You shouldn't have come here." Every instinct screamed to run, but I felt rooted to the spot as the room filled with shadows, the implications of the box weighing heavy in my mind. I blinked, trying to make sense of the creature before me. It was thin, almost frail, but the aura of menace it radiated was overpowering. The corners of its mouth twisted into a grin that sent chills down my spine. Behind it, the second figure was already slipping through the splintered doorway. "Oh God, we have to go!" Andrew shouted, panic bleeding into every word. I still clutched the box tightly. It felt like metal against my palm, a connection to something, but I couldn't focus on that now. "Where?" I blurted out, looking for an escape route. The window was out. The back door? "Upstairs! It's the only place!" Lily yelled, backing toward the staircase. We moved as one, slipping past the figures that stepped inside. They barely acknowledged us, their focus laser-locked on the box. I could feel their eyes boring into me, a hunger there that I didn't understand. The stairs creaked under our weight as we scrambled up, the shadows chasing us closely behind. I glanced back and saw the first figure gliding forward, moving unnaturally, almost as if it was gliding rather than stepping. My stomach dropped. We reached the cramped upstairs attic, the only apparent refuge. The space was cluttered with old furniture and dusty boxes, but it felt safer than the main room. I slammed the door shut behind us, leaning against it to catch my breath. "What the hell are they?" Sarah whispered, her eyes darting around us. "I don't know," I replied, my voice shaky. I fumbled with the box, still holding it tightly. The whisper reached me again, this time louder and clearer. "You brought it here." "What?" I glanced at my friends, confusion and fear pooling in my chest. "Don't open it," Andrew urged, his eyes wide. "It could be what they want." A heavy thud reverberated against the attic door. I jumped, adrenaline coursing through me. The figures below were relentless, their eagerness palpable. I desperately flicked the latch of the box, its rusted hinges groaning as I pried it open. Inside lay a collection of objects, brittle dried herbs, an old photograph of a woman with sunken eyes, and a small vial filled with a dark liquid. My breath hitched at the sight. This isn't just junk, it's something else. "They're here for this," Lily gasped, pointing at the photograph. "Maybe it has something to do with her." The attic filled with an oppressive silence as I contemplated the items. I felt the weight of unseen gazes pressing against me. "We can't stay here," I said. "They're coming." But before I could react further, the door creaked open, not from our side. It swung slowly, revealing the black shapes moving at the bottom of the stairs, waiting, patient, like a predator. "What do we do?" Sarah whimpered, clutching my arm. "Go back!" I exclaimed, urgency igniting my words. "We have to find another way down." Just as we turned to rush toward a small window, a chilling laugh echoed from below. "You can't escape." A new wave of cold washed over me. My pulse raced as I realized we were cornered. The darkness was closing in, and deep down, I knew, whatever connection this box had to the figures, I was about to find out whether it could save us or seal our fate. I barely had time to breathe. The attic was dim, dust motes swirling aimlessly in the thin shafts of light. The door was opening, and that laughter still echoed in my ears. I couldn't let those things in. "Help me move this," I said, my voice rising in urgency. I spotted an old, rusted trunk against the far wall. "We can block the door." Andrew and Lily rushed to my side, our hearts pounding as we shoved the trunk into position. As we kept our eyes on the door, I could feel a strange pull from the box still clutched in my grip. The voices swirled around me, tantalizing and frantic. "You brought it here! Use it!" "Forget it," Andrew shouted, his eyes wide as the door began to strain against our makeshift barricade. "Just focus." Sarah's eyes darted around the attic, falling on the dark shapes inching closer at the bottom of the stairs. "They're getting in," she cried, a tremor in her voice. I dug my fingers deeper into the box, suddenly overwhelmed by a sense of urgency. "Whatever this is, maybe it can help us," I said quickly, my resolve hardening. I peered inside again, searching for answers. There was a small note buried beneath the herbs. I pulled it out, the paper crumbling at my touch. A brief message scrawled in faded ink read, "For protection, you must open the vial. But heed this, the darkness feeds on fear." My heart raced as the words sank in. "The vial," I breathed, glancing at my friends. "We might have to use it." But Andrew shook his head vehemently. "We don't even know what that is. It could be poison." Before I could respond, the trunk shifted with a heavy thud, the figures pushing against the door. A single crack appeared, darkness spilling through like ink. "We don't have time to argue," I shouted, desperation rising in my chest. "We need to decide." There was a moment of silence as we all sensed the gravity of our choices. I held the vial up to the sliver of light seeping through the door. It looked innocent enough, just a small container of dark liquid. But a compelling force drew me in. "Please," I urged, "let's just try it. We need to fight back." I poured the vial into my palm, the liquid surprisingly warm against my skin. I hesitated, fear gnawing at me, but I couldn't hear the figure's breaths anymore. Something sinister pressed at the door, something eager. "There's no other way," Lily whispered, her courage faltering. I nodded, my heart racing as I raised my hand. Just as I brought it toward my mouth, the door splintered and the shadows rushed in. All at once, the hallway lit up with a pale glow, as if the darkness itself recoiled. That's when I saw it, a swirling mist forming at my fingertips, rising to meet the encroaching shadows. I could feel the vial's power, a force feeding off my fear. "Don't let it go," Andrew shouted as the figures lunged forward. And that's when everything erupted into chaos. The shadows shrieked and recoiled, but behind their movement, I could see something else, something much larger and darker. I couldn't take it back now. Whatever happened next would change everything. The mist crackled with energy, pushing back against the shadows. I felt it tug at me, pulling on my fear like a fish line snagged in the water. Andrew's shout echoed faintly as I fought to focus. "Stay together," was all I managed to shout back, even though I wasn't sure how we were supposed to remain united in this chaos. The shadows surged again, dark tendrils reaching for us, seeking the warmth of our fear. "Get away from the door," Lily screamed, her hands gripping Sarah's arm. The figures inched closer, their forms shifting in the dim light, no longer mere shadows, but grotesque shapes, bending and twisting unnaturally. I stepped forward, trying to throw the mist towards them. It hung in the air for a moment, shimmering defiantly. As soon as it hit the nearest shadow, it let out a primal shriek, a sound that rattled inside my bones. The tendril it touched dissipated, shriveling away like smoke on a summer breeze. "It's working," I shouted, emboldened by the small victory. But there were so many more. With terrifying speed, the shadows coalesced to surround me. Their faces were nothing more than whispers of familiarity, like distant memories I couldn't grasp. I fought the urge to look closer, fearing the recognition would shatter my resolve. Suddenly, Andrew lunged forward, brandishing a loose floorboard like a weapon. "We need to keep them back." His gesture was brave but reckless. Without a plan, I glanced at the vial still floating in my palm. "Guys, I think we need more of this." "Don't let them close," Sarah yelled, struggling against the pull of the darkness. "Pour it," Lily shouted back. "Pour it everywhere." I nodded, adrenaline coursing through my veins. Quickly, I spilled the rest of the vial onto the floor. The liquid shimmered, pooling at our feet, and beneath us, the wood began to glisten. The shadows hissed at the sudden brightness, retreating slightly. "Now," I urged, "step back, let's keep this up." The shadows pulsated, building inertia. The space felt electric, charged with an unseen confrontation. I could feel the fear infiltrating the air around us, wrapping around my throat like a noose. A deafening crack echoed in the attic as the trunk we'd pushed against the door finally gave way. The wooden door burst open, and a wave of darkness flooded in. I staggered back, gripping the edge of the trunk for support, as the room spun violently around me. What? What is happening?" "It's too much," Andrew cried. I couldn't let my fear take over. "We have to—" But then my voice was drowned out. The shadows began to coalesce into something towering and monstrous, a figure that reached for me, its dark form stretching wide. My heart raced. The swirling mist faltered as the enormity of it struck me. "No," I gasped, staring at its face. It looked like someone I knew, someone from my past, someone I thought I'd left behind. "Keep your distance," I shouted. But the shadows intensified, fueled by my terror. And then everything went black. I gasped as I jolted back into awareness. The attic came into view, yet it felt surreal, like I was looking at a dream distorted by fear. The darkness still loomed, but the towering figure had faded, if only for a moment. I blinked, trying to clear the remnants of the nightmare from my mind, but the shadows were still there. "Where are you?" Andrew's voice trembled, pulling me back to reality. I turned to see him struggling to keep the shadows at bay, floorboard in hand, his face pale. The glimmer of the spilled mist had dulled, and the darkness crept closer. "We need to retreat." "Right," I shouted, glancing at Lily and Sarah. They were huddled against the wall, fear etched on their faces. "Back to the window." We shuffled together, forcing our way through the dim light and gathering our nerves. Just as we moved, I felt a cold rush of air whip past my shoulder, almost like a whisper. Turning my head, I thought I saw a flicker of movement in the corner. It was a pair of familiar eyes, haunting and full of sorrow, peering at me from the shadows. Panic surged within me. I forced myself to look away and faced Andrew. "We can't let them get too close. We need a plan." As if in answer to my plea, the shadows writhed, and a low growl emanated from the depths. It felt like the entire attic shuddered with anger. I didn't have much time. My mind raced, searching for something, anything that could help us now. "Wait," Sarah suddenly exclaimed, her eyes widening. "The attic, the old trunk, it has to have something in it." "What are you talking about?" I gasped, caught off guard by her realization. "Remember what we found last summer?" She pointed to the trunk. My heart sank. I had almost forgotten. Months ago, on our first exploration of this old place, we had stumbled upon the trunk, filled with artifacts from years past. Things that felt tied to the very essence of this cabin. "Right," I said, a sliver of hope igniting. "The old photographs, they might have something we can use against these shadows." But as we turned toward the trunk, the shadows surged forward, eager and hungry. It felt like time slowed down as they danced closer. I could see the dark edges of their forms reaching for us. "We have to fight our way there," I shouted, my voice barely cutting through the noise. Andrew swung the floorboard, throwing a thin line of light to the nearest shadow. I grabbed the edge of the trunk and pulled, my heart pounding in my chest. The shadows recoiled at the burst of brightness. I fumbled with the latch, desperation clawing at me. Then there it was. The trunk creaked open, spilling out memories into the darkness. Old photos floated in the air, illuminated by the dim light. I grabbed a bunch and flung them towards the shadows. They hit the floor, and an unearthly shriek echoed through the attic, reverberating against the walls. That's when I saw it. A figure in one of the photographs. So familiar, yet twisted. I paled as the recognition struck me. "Guys, it's not just shadows. It's something worse. We have to get out of here." A sudden gust blew through, and the shadows lunged as one, flooding in with a ferocity I had never seen. My breath caught. I felt the cold fingers of the past gripping my throat as the chaos erupted around us. "Run!" I screamed, and we scrambled away, not even knowing where we were going. We bolted through the attic, the shrieks of shadows buzzing around us like a swarm of wasps. My heart raced as I clutched the photos tightly, certain that the only way out of this nightmare was to face the past unleashed upon us. "This way!" I shouted, pointing to a small window at the far end of the room. It was our only hope. "It won't hold them back for long," Andrew yelled, panic threading his voice as he swung the floorboard at a shadow creeping too close. The impact sent a jolt of light bursting forth, but the shadows merely retreated, then surged back with renewed hunger. We reached the window, but it was much too small for all of us to escape. "I'll go first," I ventured, pressing my body against the frame. The old wood splintered slightly as I pushed, but there was no time to hesitate. I could feel the vibrations of the shadows edging closer, their whispers curling around me, loathsome and patient. "Don't look back," Sarah urged, as I climbed up, forcing my body through the narrow opening. I took a breath just as I fell into the air outside, landing awkwardly. I quickly rolled to my feet and turned back. "Go, now!" Lily was next, her body wriggling through the window, and just as I reached to pull her out, the trunk behind me exploded open. Old photographs scattered wildly in the air, swirling in chaos like leaves caught in a windstorm. In that poignant moment, I caught a glimpse of the faces in those photographs, twisted expressions staring out at us, mouths agape as though begging to be saved, even as their eyes glinted with malevolence. "Help!" Andrew cried from inside the attic. I turned just in time to see another shadow lunge toward him, pulling him back, the weight of darkness dragging him toward the void. "Andrew!" I shouted, my arms aching as I extended them toward him. Without thinking, I grasped for the closest photograph on the ground, one where a man stood laughing, carefree, then flung it into the shadows. It struck the dark mass, and in an instant, a blinding flash lit up the attic. For a split second, everything froze. The shadows hesitated, clutching their forms like smoke caught in a breeze. Seizing my opportunity, I shoved Andrew hard against the wall, forcing him to tumble out of the window. We hit the ground in a heap, scrambling to our feet, as I pulled Lily and Andrew away from the towering shadows now filling the attic. "Run!" I shouted, and the three of us dashed into the woods, the light from the cabin receding rapidly behind us. We ran for what felt like an eternity, branches clawing at our clothes, roots snaking underfoot. My breath came in harsh gasps, fear propelling us forward. Behind us, the cries of the shadows echoed, hollow, haunting, like lost souls. Once we reached a clearing, we paused, chests heaving. "Did we lose them?" Sarah gasped, her eyes darting around the trees. I don't know," I stammered breathlessly. As if to punctuate my words, a resonance of unsettling laughter rippled from the cabin, echoing through the woods, chilling us to the bone. "We can't stay here. We have to keep moving." But even as we turned to retreat deeper into the woods, a pressing sense of loss settled within me. The box, the shadows, all would come back. How could they not? I couldn't shake the feeling that we had only postponed the inevitable confrontation with whatever dark force had woven itself into our lives. As we huddled together, stumbling back towards the road where help would be, I glanced back one last time at the cabin, shrouded in trees, its silhouette a ghost against the fading light. A weight settled on me, thick and cold, knowing that while we escaped, the questions lingered. Had we truly left the cabin behind? What would come for us next? We reached the road, finally collapsing onto the gravel, panting and disheveled, lungs burning from the sprint. The twilight cast long shadows, and just as relief washed over me, the whispers returned. They remained, lingering in the corner of my mind, blurring the lines of what might be real and what could have just been a figment of a fear-driven imagination. I moved to a different city after that, but sometimes I still wonder if that cabin waits, hidden within those woods, ever hungry for the next group of friends looking for fun. I try not to think about it, but the shadows linger, whispering softly in the dark. Something about that cabin isn't finished with me yet.